Awesome. Thanks for coming. Great, so my name is Simon, and as was mentioned, I'm the Studio Bolland. I'm the producer at Studio Bolland. I want to say a shout out to the people on the live stream, because it's really awkward being on a live stream. I don't know if during COVID, were you ever one of the COVID weddings where you kind of were watching it online, all you basically saw was a blurry two elderly people at the back of the church chatting. I don't think it'll ever work. Shh, grand. That's kind of basically my experience of live stream weddings. Just welcome live stream people. Normally at these sorts of events you're meant to have credentials for speaking, which sadly I mainly lack. Being a producer at a place that does explainer videos, I'm just really well versed in doing like Meet Jeff videos. They're kind of like, Meet Jeff. He needs a new car and medical insurance and shoes. Well, luckily there's Medicar by Nike or something like that. That's mainly what we do and what I spend my time doing. I guess my best credential is I once voice directed a 5-time Academy Award winner on how to guzzle poop. And I know, that story needs a lot more context. I'm not going to give it to you. You're going to have to just let your imagination run wild as to what that could be. But let me tell you a little bit about Studio Bolland. Well, actually, first, what we're going to do. I'm going to speak to you for about 15 minutes and about what is downtime and what we do with downtime. And then my colleague Richard over there is going to interview some people practically to get an idea of what they have been doing in our studio when they don't have jobs on. And then for the last 30 minutes, I know you've already been doing some networking, but we thought we'd kind of get you to all go into groups and do some more kind of deliberate networking. Now, even though I am speaking tonight, I am quite an introvert at heart, and so some of you who are introverts are probably thinking, I do not want to do that. Please, can I just slink out down the stairs while you do that? I get that, but what we're going to try to do is, the whole point of it is to hopefully connect you with other people. That's kind of why this whole Discord server and everything exists, is to try to get creative people to be chatting more to each other and collaborating more. So that's kind of our heart behind it. And to make it a bit easier, so you don't have to kind of feel like you don't know what's going to happen when you enter that group, is we're just going to be talking about any ideas that you've had while kind of listening to us talking about downtime. Maybe it's downtime projects you want to kind of work on. So if you did not get a piece of paper on your chair, then please let us know and we'll get you one. But basically, any time during this talk, if you have an idea or anything that you think would be worthwhile speaking about when you're in a group, you can jot it down. And if you're an introverted person, then at least you have something to say. Because there will probably be someone else there that goes, hey, what do you think? And you're like, oh no. And then you can look down and be like, I think dog. And then, you know, that's it. All right, so Studio Bolland, we are 10 people, according to that slide. We are 8 animators and illustrators. We are 1 producer, which is me, and we're 1 person that makes sure that the studio doesn't become an absolute dog show. And in case you think we're making up people, I can give you like, I'm not going to go through everyone, but that's Darren. He's a lovely man, very lovely man, questionable taste in music, all right? That's Darren. There's Richard, lovely taste in music, questionable man. So that's kind of our studio. We've been going for quite a while now. I did write it down in my notes, 2014, yeah. So quite some time. And it's been a great, Richard, the one sitting over there, he is the Bolland in Studio Bolland. It is pronounced Bolland. A lot of people call it Studio Bolland, which is very understandable, but there are 2 L's. We at some stage we should probably think about changing Richard's name to Richard Bolland, and then we won't run into that problem ever again. But he founded the studio with the man over here, who would ordinarily be with us, but he's currently starring in a Magnum PI reboot. Well, no, that's just what he looks like in that photo. I know you can't tell, but he's wearing a really loud Hawaiian t-shirt, which makes me think that. But he's not here tonight because he actually broke his knee. It's not, I mean, that's not a joke. He broke his knee, that's horrible. No, he is fine. He got blood clots, but they kind of sorted themselves out. But anyway, Richard, many years ago, he decided that his freelance work was getting a bit too much, so he decided to start something more full-time with the kind of requests he was getting. He brought on Jake to get involved in that as well, and that's kind of how the whole thing started. So that's a little bit about us. Now, what is downtime, and what do we do during downtime? So earlier this year, about kind of beginning of June, I remember I was going away for the week, so I had to brief in Richard and Jake about what jobs were on, what they had to look out for in terms of clients getting back to things, and what balls couldn't be dropped, what plates had to keep on spinning. And in this email, I remember listing about 20 or so projects that were currently kind of in process, and then there were an extra 2 projects that were probably going to come in. Then I know Richard was also working on a motion design course that wasn't even included in that email. And so that's like a lot of projects, about 20-ish projects, and some of you are thinking, but you're only 10 people, and 2 of those people do not animate, and that is correct. So how do we have so many projects on, but so little people? And part of that is because I'm sure you've all encountered this, is that clients sometimes just stop talking. They stop saying things, they stop replying to emails, they go, I'll get back to you, and then that becomes 2 weeks of them getting back to you. If you've ever done anything like go, I'll get back to you, and then that becomes 2 weeks of them getting back to you. If you've ever done anything medical explainer, if you've ever done that kind of thing, what we find is that there's just a lot of sort of silence, a lot of time where people are trying to find out what the feedback is, make sure that everything is implemented well. And so that's kind of how we're able to have so many projects on the go. But even that, even trying to overload ourselves intentionally so that we know that we kind of aren't wasting time, even that still elicits some time, some hours in the day where people don't necessarily have anything to do. Now if you're a freelancer, you can't remember what slide is next. But you have the easiest job. You just press the next button. You don't have to remember. There we go, that's the next slide. Oh, I see, all right. I prefer the other one. There we go. Yeah, we're involved in communication, our company. You wouldn't think. All right, so we've realized that we have to have some sort of thing to go to when we have downtime, because otherwise all we're going to have to show for ourselves is many hours of Counter-Strike and lots of YouTube videos that we probably didn't need to watch. So as a company, we've decided to actually try and utilize the downtime a bit more proactively, and that's kind of why you guys are all here tonight. Well, I think you're actually all here tonight to eat popcorn, but sadly the machine didn't work. So the second reason you're all here tonight was to hear about downtime. So we've kind of broken up our downtime into 3 main things that we encourage people to do. The first is, that's a cue, rest. I think it's pretty obvious, but it's probably not good to spend every second of the day feeling like you have to be entirely productive. And so we feel that rest is an important thing. If you've been doing like a lot of jobs straight back to back, back to back, back to back, and you finally have a bit of downtime, we probably wouldn't advise you to launch up your dream sort of movie that you've been working on the side and then slave away for that in the brief hours you have free. We'd probably be like, go outside, make yourself some tea. It's obviously, if you're a freelancer, downtime could literally be downtime. You could just lie down. That's what I would do if I was at home more often. I would lie down and be like, oh, my toddler's at daycare, I can rest. But I'm not there, I'm at work. So my downtime is like, I'll go make some tea, I'll go sit on the couch a bit, I'll go bag one of my colleagues, find out how they're doing, that kind of a thing. The second thing you can do is you can use this time to learn. So we have a Discord server which we run most of our communication through, and on that server we're constantly sort of sharing various tutorials with our staff, so that if they do feel like they want to brush up their skills in a certain area, that they'll be able to. So, for example, the things that we get a lot of traction on is Ben Marriott, Jake in Motion, BAM Animation, Cameron, who I believe spoke here, on part of the Discord thing, and obviously Skillshare. So there's just a couple of learning resources you can look out for. But that is something that if you are on the Discord server, when you encounter things that you found very helpful, please put them on there, because that is pretty much how we get better, is by learning and collaborating. So that's the one thing we encourage is, if you've got some downtime and you have rested and you feel like you were able to take on some new skills, then use it to learn. And then the other thing we do is create. I think as creative, it's it's important that we create and spend time creating stuff that actually resonates with us a bit, because in reality, as I said, can often be a meet Jeff company, and sometimes meeting Jeff isn't as creative as doing something on the side. And so that's why it's important to make sure that we have those sorts of projects that we actually are excited to open up Illustrator or After Effects or whatever it is that you're working in. So we found that we've, over the past, had three main kind of things that we spent doing. The one is we decided to work on a short film as part of our downtime, big project that we pulled in as many people into the studio as possible. Here is the trailer. It doesn't have sound.
I quit my job today at the Lame Palace. Talk about fast food. That place makes you want to fast food. As in, like, not eat the food in terms of fasting.
Don't listen to him, Ramsey. He's got nailed it.
And that, we spent a lot of time on that. And I think it went to 3 festivals. So when it said coming to a festival, 8 festivals, that's not true. But what was really great about that project is, whilst it maybe did not gain any kind of commercial success or future work for the studio, what it did do is it taught us a lot about making films, how to go about kind of structuring the narrative, how to actually avoid After Effects if your plan is to make any form of what are you doing, sir? Fair enough. Even Google does not like our short film. Anyways, so even though, yes, it maybe wasn't quite the hit we imagined it to be, it was still incredibly valuable, kind of roping everyone to work on that and learning what we did along the way. Part of a grander sort of project that we're quite keen to do now is work on a sort of like sort of almost animated skit show that's going to be kind of our grander vision for our downtime projects. And that, I'm sure we will have learned lots of things from by having done that Ramsey film, which, you know, had lots of pros and cons. The next slide, if Rich ever gets there, is speed projects. Quickly, click before you pay the trailer. There we go. Speed projects is something that we did when we actually realized that the whole studio was having quite a bit of downtime round about the same time. And so we've talked about this before, I think, at a dribble event, so I don't want to go to too deep levels of details. But essentially what we do is we take the Friday afternoon off, we come up with a theme, and we say everyone has just the afternoon to create a whole entire little animated video or GIF or really cool illustration. And the reason why we actually started this thing is we found that we weren't really using time very well in terms of knowing how long it would take to do illustrations for a video or animations for a video. And so we thought a practical thing might be is to actually give people a really huge deadline, sort of help them kind of pace themselves better and know sort of how long they can spend doing illustration before moving on to animation, and kind of really figure out the nitty-gritty of how to do a project quickly. So that's sort of why we introduced it. It also was a really fun, creative way to use time. And so we have to present a theme, and then as Richard's like cycling through these things, you'll see the various different projects that came up as a result of deciding to do speed projects. That was the second thing we did. Now the third thing that is more recent development, and you might have even seen this on the Motion Design Discord server, which, by the way, just show of hands, is everyone on that? Alright, so not actually that many people. So you can take your phone and you can scan this thing, and it'll go to a link tree thing. Otherwise, if you're not a robot, and you can't just read QR codes naturally and know where to go, there will be a website link. I would really encourage you to get on the Discord server. It's just a really fun space where people can kind of meet each other and share their work, and we can all collaborate. Anyways, so what happens on that Discord server now is that we do sort of theme prompts, which is we suggest that whoever has downtime, or whoever's just wanting to get involved in one of these projects, I think this theme for this week was gravity. We'll say the theme is gravity, come up with something cool, and then people will sort of share their work. And so as a studio, we've kind of piggybacked off that idea and are now using those themes as little miniature projects that people can work on in their spare time. So those are kind of the three main ways. There are obviously loads of different ways you guys could use in your freelance capacity, downtime to be more productive, and or in your kind of studio capacity how to do that. But we would really encourage doing so because we've instantly seen the fruits of like everyone really enjoying kind of getting to move on to these like side projects. And then because they are, in our case, happening in the studio, everyone kind of weigh in and say like, hey, I really love that, or have you thought about doing this? And it does become like a really fun, collaborative thing to work on. So now, introverts, you'll be happy, because I'm going to give you 5-ish minutes, I think that sounds about right, of time for you to fill in that worksheet. If you've had during, did I say worksheet? I meant to say paper. Worksheet sounds like kindergarten kind of thing. It'll give you time to fill that in at something while I've been chatting, or if there is a project that in your back of your mind you've always wanted to get to, and you're like, actually, maybe I should be doing that with my downtime. This is the time to write that down so that later on when we go into groups, you won't feel so alone. You'll have a thing you can say. All right, so we'll do that for a bit, and then I'll hand over to Rich. He'll do an interview. And thank you. Hello.
Thanks so much for having us here. It's really great to be able to just share our stupid ideas and also to just meet people and collaborate and work on cool stuff. I would like to invite Kirsten and Garth, or we call him Ghost in the office, up to take this mic from me. And I'm going to interview you guys. Hold on, I've actually got a little thing that changes the slides. So this should hopefully work. Let's see if it works. Yes. All right. So you guys can just basically pass the mic between you two. And yeah, so this is Garth and this is Kirsten, in case that wasn't clear. And we're going to chat a little bit to them about, or I'm going to chat to them about their... Is this mic working or not? Or is it cutting off?
It's a bit scratchy.
It's a bit scratchy. Okay, this is the good one. Oh, that's so much crisper. So we're going to chat to them, well, I'm going to chat to them a little bit about their downtime projects. Thanks so much. And they're going to go through a little, I'm going to ask them some questions, and hopefully it will be insightful for you guys. And yeah, let's take it from there. So these are the projects that we're going to be talking about today. It's Kirsten's Tiger on the left, and you'll see that we've used that as our main theme for this evening's talk. And then Garth did the rock and roll theme on the right. So the one on the left was during a theme called roller coasters, and the one on the right is rock and roll. So Kirsten, I want to know from both of you guys, you know, do we as professional motion designers use references, and where do you find your references?
Yes, we use references. I think there's like a misconception generally by younger artists that using references is cheating, but it's not. Because it's impossible for your brain to know how everything looks. You just can't hold that kind of visual library. So I use references from like Google Images, Pinterest, ArtStation. Sometimes you can find really good photography work on Instagram. Like there's a bunch of photographers I follow. And yeah, then I just kind of, or if you, depending on what you're working on, but like it's a really good idea if you can, to form your own reference. It can be quite fun, and then you can like kind of embody the action you're trying to do, and you can get a lot of insight from it.
Yeah, when I started working at Studio Bolland, I had like a lot of trouble with like more complex kind of posed movements and stuff, and I remember Richard telling me that oftentimes animation is supposed to mimic reality, so like it only makes sense to use reality as your reference. And so then you can like record yourself doing an action and then just follow the same step, or you can like make basic poses and then use that, you'd use that as a reference. Yeah.
Cool, yeah, hang on to that guy. So a lot, like I think if you go into any kind of YouTube channel, or you see some tutorial, people ask, like, what are those brushes that you use? And so we figured, hey, Kirsten used some really amazing brushes in some of her artwork, especially for this roller coasters theme. So we thought it might be interesting to find out what those brushes were and where we can find them.
So I use a collection of brushes. The ones I use the most are from Lois or Louise van Baal. She has a free brush set. And then I also use some Kyle, the Mega Pack, and his watercolor brushes. I really love using texture in my work because I really don't like spending hours painting. It's a waste of time in my mind. And so with textured brushes, you can add a lot of visual interest without spending a lot of time working on it. So for this piece that I did like a little animation using the watercolor brushes because I was really interested to see the kind of effect I would get with a very organic brush. And I quite like how it came out with like very like traditional looking. And I thought this was like quite a cool way to use my downtime because I like learned how to animate in Photoshop, which is very difficult actually. And like I did something that made me really excited, and it's not something you can necessarily always do for a client. So
cool. Then Garth has been trying out some really interesting stuff in After Effects where he creates animations without keyframes, or at least with very little keyframes. So Garth, explain to us why this is not witchcraft.
Okay, so I came across like this one tutorial that kind of taught you how to layer things in the z-axis but using like an expression. And then I thought like if I could do that with an expression, which in my mind was kind of difficult, I could probably like make a lot of stuff with the expression stuff. So this was the expressions that I used for like the last GIF thing. As you can see, I only used like 5 keyframes on the camera, and then I made like the rectangle, like change the scale and the rotation, and then all of the repetitions of the rectangle and stuff I basically did with like expressions, so then they all follow one another in sequence. And then when I first got into it, I thought, because I had studied programming in university, like I didn't study animation or anything, and then I thought it was going to be like very difficult to like get into, but then I discovered that like JavaScript is basically running After Effects, like that's how all of your tools are made, like normal, like your UI interfaces and all of your plugins are probably made like completely in JavaScript. So then if the plugins can do it, I should also be able to do it. Yeah. So basically I just like reverse, or I try to find out like what properties control what, and then I use like a lot of sliders and things and try and animate things that way.
Cool, thanks so much. So yeah, my final question to you guys is really just how have the downtime projects helped you as a creative?
I think Simon spoke about this a bit earlier, but like with client work it can be a little bit repetitive, and it's really nice to break out of that and to do something that you're passionate about. And I find that it like kind of reignites like my excitement for motion design.
Yeah, for me, I remember in the beginning, I animated like really slowly, and then every Friday we would have like speed projects where you make an entire animation in like 3 hours. And then obviously I couldn't animate really slowly then. So yeah, that kind of taught me like, I used to do this thing where I focus on like very small things in my animation that don't matter much. But then the speed project thing kind of taught me like do one pass of like doing like the most important animation of that like scene, and then come back to do like the smaller things afterward. That way you like save on a lot of time. Also taught me to use like plugins and effects a lot, because effects like cut out so much time manually animating.
Cool, I want you guys to stay up here for another 30 seconds because I just want to open the floor if anyone has any questions for Garth and Kirsten specifically about their projects or other projects. And while you're thinking of those questions, I just want to kind of go in and just say once again like how amazing our downtime projects have helped us as a studio to kind of build our creative bone and try and explore different styles and techniques when it comes to that type of work. Because a lot of clients, as we know, like they're not as open to exploring new techniques and designs, and so it's a perfect time to experiment during those times. Anybody got any questions for these two? Yeah.
So as creatives, I don't know if I need this, but So as creatives, we're obviously really self-critical about the work that we put out. We get really precious about it, and it's very difficult to get to the space where you're excited to craft something within 3 hours, right? So how would you recommend people be less precious about their work in order to let go a little, in order to do the 3-hour projects? It is a difficult question. I think it's because like I'm still struggling with it like every day. So what do you do to let go a little? Do you decide that, you know, like this doesn't have to be released and that like on social media and that takes off pressure? Like what do you do to feel more at ease about creating a project in a short amount of time and, you know, like just not feeling so pressured for it to be perfect?
So the year that we started doing speed projects was the year that I started, and I didn't know a lot. So like a lot of mine looked kind of janky. But I think it helped a lot having like the guys in the studio at the time, because it wasn't like I never felt like self-conscious about putting like subpar work out there, because I knew like the feedback that I was going to get after everyone had seen it was always going to be to make it better. So then I kind of like just kept that in mind, like it's not criticism, it is like very constructive to have people like tell you, this is how you could have done. I think we also like swapped a lot of like knowledge then, because then I found out there were like very easy ways to do things a lot quicker or make things look a lot better. Yeah.
I'm also pretty new, so I haven't got to that point yet. So the last Freed project we did, I only got to the illustration phase. And like when we like showed it to the office afterwards, I was like, well, you know, everyone's got these beautiful animations, like, here's my illustration. But I know that next time that I'm going to get at least some animation in. And like I didn't post it or anything, so it's kind of like a throwaway project of 3 hours, and I learned something. So I don't know if that helps or answers the question.
And I can add two things from a production side of things. I think the first thing is that usually no matter whether something is like absolutely excellent and polished or not, or whether it's not, there's usually some sort of gem of like creative awesomeness in it somewhere. And so I think if you are someone that is with other colleagues and are kind of reviewing their work or something, it's about trying to find what can we like encourage out of this thing, what is the positive thing, so that if something is maybe not finished, it wasn't for nothing. There's still something to be gained from that. There's still some praise to be given. So it's about trying to find those things. And then I come from a music background, and one of the mixing programs I use, their kind of final thing is like a mix is never completed, it's only ever surrendered. So kind of getting that into your mind of like, everything we work on might never feel like it's actually ready, but at the end of the day, at some stage, we just have to kind of let it go and then move on to the next thing. Any other questions?
Hello. This is a question for Garth. I'm Ziad, by the way. We used to work together and literally drove here together. So I got a question for you. How has not having a background in animation affected you in your career? Do you feel that it was like a benefit, or like was it a crutch to you, like having a programming background in it?
I don't think it was definitely harder than it would have been starting if I had just started off, or if I had a background when I started. But I think like what was really cool is that the studio was like, yo, you kind of know what you're doing and we see that you have potential to do better. Do you want to try doing this? And then I like remember like working on my first project, and it was like really janky, like I said. But then everyone else like kind of like pitched in, like teaching me things. So I also like learned very quickly, luckily. So I learned very quickly. So I don't think it was too big of a detriment. I think there's also something to be said about like having like a programmer's kind of mindset, where I think in my case, like I like looking at things and I like breaking things down into like small pieces. So I'll be like, I can do this, and then I can do this, and if I put them together, I can like do something. So I don't think it was too big a detriment, but like starting was definitely harder.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Just a quick technical one. The scripting in After Effects.
For certain things, yes. Like I was talking speaking to my colleague Jason this afternoon, and we like found out that like you could probably do the animation that I did with a repeater, which would also make it like really quick. But then I wouldn't be able to like control like small fine-tuned things. So it definitely has. And even when you think about like your normal workflow, like that script looked a little complicated. It was like 5 or 6 lines. But even just using like the wiggle expression, or like using like an expression that's like parented to a slider, it's technically like also using an expression, and it does like those kind of things definitely speed up your workflow.
Cool, thanks guys. My motion don't wiggle. I think, does anyone have any burning questions? Did you have your hand up? Yeah. Cool.
So I just wanted to ask, in terms of like when you do have that downtime and you are working on those things, essentially how forgiving can you be with indecisiveness or like back and forth, where you kind of, I don't know if I maybe just missed it, but are like there brief assignments for that time, or is it just kind of like, you know, go on and do something that's really, really exciting? Like how detailed are the briefs? And in that, how forgiving can you be on like back and forth, and then coming to like 2 hours and going, crap, I've gone backwards and forwards between 2 different ideas and not actually like created anything worth looking at creatively and saying there's something like some sort of gem there.
So we get given briefs like every 2 weeks, and if you're getting stuck, I normally just like ask, like, these are the ideas I have, what do you think about them? Can someone like give me feedback or input to like kind of if I'm not sure what to do. But then another thing, if I don't have a prompt, is I keep a notepad on my phone, and when I get like super inspired or I get a good idea, I'll write it down. And then in the future, when I have some downtime, I'll go through my list and be like, oh, I feel like doing that today. And I'll kind of try like make sure I complete something at least, even if I end up changing it later on. Yeah, is that a good answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something we did as an office that became a necessity during COVID, when everyone had to sort of go from being in an office environment to suddenly working from home, is that we introduced what we call 4 p.m. whips, which usually would be something that I think would happen between like just one creator and a producer. But what we did is we created a channel for it on Discord and actually encouraged everyone at the end of their day to share whatever they're working on, whether it be a kind of speed project or a personal project, or whether it be kind of a client project. And that way we try to encourage feedback into kind of all aspects, whether it was a client project or whether it was a personal project or some sort of downtime thing. At least we all knew what people were doing, but at the same time we're able to kind of give those little bit of creative nuggets of like, oh my gosh, you're on the right track, do more of that. Or if we had an idea that we thought might plus to what was being done, we could then kind of have a space to share it.
Alrighty, so we have about 15 minutes left of this evening before we call it quits. And what we really want to do now is like a huge part of our studio and a huge part of this industry is collaboration, and everyone talks about it, but sometimes it's hard to do, right? Like it sucks sometimes to reach out to people because, you know, we're vulnerable. I'm vulnerable right now. And so what we're going to do tonight is try and make little mini studios, because I think that will be a rad thing to do. And everyone has got a little number on their name tag, or at least they should. If you don't, give yourself a number between 1 and 6 right now. Think of it in your head. I'm going to pull out a card that has your number. And what we're going to do now, I'm going to point to some parts of the room, and I'm just going to call out those numbers, and then it'll be really rad if you can just go to that part of the room and just like take that piece of paper that you've got in your hand, or maybe you've got just some ideas in your head, and just say to that group, like, this is what I am keen to do during my downtime. And if it's a project that other people are interested in, and like, hey, that idea sounds really cool, I'd love to help you make that. That's what we're trying to get tonight. That would be gold, to be able to get 2 random or sort of random people to collaborate on an idea that you can do in your downtime, when you find that, you know, whether that downtime exists on weekends or in the evenings or in between projects. let's make it happen. And so here it goes nothing.